Hello, my name is Luis Cambuston, and this is a sample table updating with C#, ASP.NET, SQL, JQuery, XML, etc. This is a small code sample. The customer required an option to manage status codes related to programs. Explaining the reason for the requirement is beyond this demo's intent. We use Microsoft SQL Studio to create a table. It only has two columns, it's program ID and status ID. And we're going to save it. The name will be program status. Now we use Visual Studio 2010 to create our object with two properties, program ID and status ID. We are going to open our menu control, the design part of it. I'm going to copy and paste to create a new option. We're going to name it statuses, and the label will be manage program statuses. Now we're going to run our application with Internet Explorer. We're going to see if our new menu option is there, and it is. Back to SQL Studio. We create our stored procedure called get program statuses with one parameter, program ID. We execute it, and now it's saved. Back into Visual Studio, where we have this function called get program status. This is going to use a SQL data reader to create a list of all our statuses. Each status is going to be an object, and each object is going to be added to a list of objects that are going to be returned by this function. This is a list of our program statuses, and then we add some basic error trapping, emailing the developer if there's a problem. Now we need a user control to push the information back from SQL into the browser. We're going to name it, as you may have guessed already, get program status. This requires some basic HTML and also an ASP control, in this case a literal, that is going to hold the information coming from the code side of the control. We have a frame control that is in charge of showing all the controls, called by our menu option. This is going to be called when the title is statuses. And this is the control that we just created, the get program statuses. From the ASP control, now we go back to JQuery JavaScript. When the frame is loaded with the ASP control, we're going to require JQuery to add events to our HTML controls. This is going to be done in a new function. It's going to be called bind program statuses. At this point, we're not going to put all the code. We're just going to create the function and add an alert just for testing purposes. Later on, we'll add all the functionality. Back to our get status control, the ASP, we'll go to the code portion. These are our namespaces. Now we have some arrays with the business rules. We have a list coming back from SQL, and a string builder that is going to hold the HTML, which are basically checkboxes. Executed, we're going to expect to see an alert, and then we're going to see our status information. That's our menu option, alert, and info. As you just saw, we need a lot of styling. So we go to our style sheets. I already added some code. I'm going to add just one more property for you to see. Hopefully it will look a lot better this time. We'll run it again with Internet Explorer. It really made a difference. Now we're going to add two HTML buttons. One to hit OK and save our information. The other to cancel and just close. The little frame or dialog, if you want to name it that appears when we run our application is way too tall. I'm using Firefox to take some measures of the screen. There's this little add-on called Measure It. This is going to help us get rid of the extra space. Back to the code, and we need to change the code in two places. One is inside of our get program status control, and the other is going to be part of the menu. One of the parameters passed to the menu is the height, so we make it shorter. Run it again. It looks a lot better. And we go back to our SQL Server Management Studio. Here we're creating the store procedure that is going to update our program statuses. One of the parameters that we're passing is an XML. The whole purpose of having an XML as a parameter is that we're going to update multiple records in one trip to the server instead of one trip per record. In this case, we just pass the program ID and the XML. With the XML received, we create a little table, and that table is going to help us to remove the program status ID, the old ones, and insert the new ones. We execute it to save it. And we're back in our Visual Studio. This is our data layer that is going to call the store procedure that we just created. It only has two parameters, the program ID and the XML that is going to be created from our business layer. This is our XML, and as usual, the basic error trapping. Now we're moving to our business layer. The Ajax portion, we're going to have to add a page that is going to handle all of the code. As you can guess, the name is going to be Update Program Status. Doesn't require any HTML. It's just going to execute some code. Now we're going to go to our JavaScript, JQuery. Remember, we have a function to bind. We're going to replace this with some code. Basically, it's validating that at least one of the status is there, and then creating a list of all the statuses separated by comma, and then it's going to call another function called update program status. This new function we're going to have to add. At this point, we're just going to put a little alert for testing. And we're going to execute our program. calls our function, and our cancel closes the window. Back to JQuery, and we're really going to call the page right now. I'm stealing some code from another function, changing parameter. Instead of update PO, we're going to update program status. Change the parameter that we're passing. Instead of being PO ID, it's just going to be statuses. And then when everything's successful, we're going to close our window, just like we do when on the cancel event. And ready to go. This is a reference to our namespace and our data layer. Now we have some code that creates very basic XML. The S tags are our statuses, and we're able to call our data layer function. We are running our program from Visual Studio. We're going to add some breaking points to go step by step. If you remember, the data came from JQuery JavaScript as comma separated. So now we're splitting into an array. For each element, we're creating our element with tag S. This is how our XML looks like. Let's see if the information was saved. It worked. I'm going to remove my checkpoints and do a little bit more testing. Check every checkbox, save. Uncheck every checkbox and see if our validation works. Seems to be working okay. Hope you enjoy.